Good evening, everybody. It's that time of the week once again for an episode of Lore Lords, and this is episode 56, Warhammer 40k, Part 2. Last week, we learned about some events leading up to modern-day Warhammer, but we're not quite caught up yet. It's all pretty miserable. The best thing that happened was, ironically, the formation of Slaanesh, which was basically just one gigantic elven orgy, which sounds great to me. But unfortunately, it led to the creation of Slaanesh. So after that, everything just gets really bad. And things are getting worse. So Atlas, you want to take it away?
As a Chaos player, I also think it sounds great. I think that was probably the best part of the last episode. Yeah, we're going to pick up where we left off. I'm going to do a real quick recap, take just a couple minutes. Where last episode, kind of like you just did, where we went through the whole ancient history where these lizards ruled the galaxy. They found these dudes called Necrontyr. They had a war. The lizard people basically went extinct and hid away. They became called the Necrons, living machine people who then all, after millions of years of fighting, went into big nappies. Elves ruled the galaxy, watched over until humans got really big, and at around the same time humans got big from our Earth, our Earth as they call Terra. Elves started to decline. Humans kind of took the forefront, invented AI. The plot of Terminator happened, but instead of on Earth, it was a galaxy-wide event.
Yeah, that's no good.
So, but humans won out, lost a lot of stuff. This guy called the Emperor came up from seemingly almost nowhere, took over the humanity, called it the Imperium of Man, made super soldiers called Space Marines and 20 children, reunited with his kids, crusaded across the galaxy. His kids fell to demons called Chaos and all started killing each other. And at the end of that, called the Horus Heresy, which is where we left off at the end, the Emperor had been gutted by his favorite son, Horus, and then put into what is known as the Golden Throne, which is
he looks like shit.
Which is his permanent resting place where he sits forever, a rotting skeletal corpse who needs to stay alive because his mind forms what is called the Astronomicon, which is how humans are able to get across the galaxy.
He doesn't look so good.
Yeah. So also, if you're watching this live on stream, we do have a whole bunch of pictures today to show what things look like and how it's going. So I hope you're all excited for us to get into Warhammer Part 2. Warhammer 40,000 Part 2, I should say. Where we're going to start off in the next major time period in Part 1, the Great Scouring.
Okay.
So already
great search.
Yeah, already off to a time of it doesn't sound good, but we'll see what it is.
Yeah, you don't scour when things are good.
Yeah. you're not looking, you're scouring. There's some connotation to that. So sometimes it's just called the Scouring, or sometimes it's called the Great Scouring. This is the time period between the end of the Horus Heresy, with our Emperor of Mankind being installed into the Golden Throne, and the end of the 31st millennium, which was full of the Imperium of Man's great counteroffensive against the traitors. So, they attacked Earth. That's when the Emperor got gutted by his son. And then
I'm sorry, I wasn't laughing like, haha, suck it. I was just kind of like, right, of course.
Yeah, so that was that. Okay. They were on Earth. So then they all ran away. When Horus, his son, got killed by the Emperor, who was a leader of the traitors, they didn't have a leader anymore. They all split into their own factions, which they already were, like their own legions of Space Marines, but now they only listen to their legion leader, their Primarch, not anyone else, or whoever was running it at the time. A lot of Primarchs are dead at this point. So yeah, there really was no more traitor army. It was just splinter forces of chaos running away, and most of them fled into the Eye of Terror, which is what we mentioned last episode, which is where Slaanesh got birthed. It's just a giant hole in real space that leads into the warp, which is where the demons and chaos people come from. And it's just there. And once you go in there, you go into the warp. And chaos are pretty safe. Safe there, they're not, but they're safer than they are in real. They can hide out in the warp for eternity, basically.
Sure.
So some, however, would retreat to their planets. Like they had their own worlds that they had conquered, and they would go back there instead of going into the warp. The Empire did not waste any effort in ordering these planets purged of all life, and they would often do so in orbit. They would just park their fleets ahead on top of these traitor worlds and just burn the surface to ash. The whole goal of this was to wipe out any record of the traitor legions. Like we mentioned last time, they were officially expunged from Imperial records. And they did so. They went to these chaos planets and just burned it there. Even if people on these planets weren't chaos, they knew about chaos, and that was bad enough. So they all got killed.
That's not good. Yeah, that's some serious paranoia.
Yeah, that's a big attitude.
Is that referred to as a mood?
I think mood? that's a bad mood. I would say definitely that's taking censorship to another level. So sometimes these traitor legions would be able to fight back. They'd have their own navy, and they would stop the orbital strikes, and they would have to fight on the land. But they would never stand a chance against the Loyalist forces, who were led by Roboute Guilliman, who we talked about last episode, who was the Primarch of the Ultramarines, and who took over the Empire as the Imperial Regent. He's basically the only Primarch still around who's a Loyalist. All the other ones are dead or missing.
I remember that now. Okay. I forgot the name for a second.
Yeah.
What's his name again one more time?
Roboute Guilliman. We're going to be calling him Robbie G, Bobby G. It's what everyone calls him.
Robbie G. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember Robbie G. I'm like, why does that sound so...
Robbie G. Roboute Guilliman. So, while many did successfully make it into the Eye of Terror or the smaller warp storms, such as the Maelstrom, which are just smaller versions of the Eye of Terror, just little holes in reality, the majority of the traitor legions would actually not make it and be slain by the Empire. So the Chaos people were at a pretty low number at this point. The fighting would, however, still last for years to come, as Chaos-corrupted systems were plenty and they had to be purged, and then put under the watch of a newly formed group of the Imperial government called the Inquisition. These guys would be a now infamous sect of the Empire with basically limitless authority, who operate above the law on a mission of finding and rooting out all chaos. So next we see an event known as the Second Founding, which I have a hilarious picture of, which I just pulled up. And this was the effort of reorganizing the remaining 9 Loyalist Space Marine legions. So if you remember, it was all like there was 9 legions of Loyalists and then 8 legions of Chaos. And they were all these Space Marines, right? So after the Horus Heresy, Bobby G decided that was too much power. A legion is too much power for one person to lead. So he decided he was going to break them up into a bunch of smaller ones. And so instead of them being like 10,000 man Space Marine forces, they would be broken into 1,000 man Astartes organizations known as chapters, in accordance with a new rulebook that he had written called the Codex Astartes. So the Codex was a highly detailed manual and instruction guide for not only battle tactics, but raising, training, and organizing a Space Marine chapter. So the remaining 9 Loyalist legions broke into a ton of different little chapters, which would be able to recruit themselves. Like they would break up. Sometimes a chapter would only start with 50 members, but they would find their own planet and start recruiting their own Space Marines from and making up to 1,000.
Yeah. Look at all the makes and models that come in. I thought I was looking at a big thing of Gundams. One of them just looks like Samus, honestly.
Yeah, no, the color of them all is... If you look up Space Marine chart, you'll find exactly what the chapter chart, you'll find this. And it shows all the ones breaking down of all the different kinds. You can see the Ultramarines, the blue ones in the middle, have the most underneath them. And then all the ones at the bottom are the ones who aren't really attached to any direct chapter. And what this kind of does for players of the miniature game is when you paint, you can paint your entire own color scheme and chapter, and it makes sense now to be fitting into the lore. So you can have your own.
Because I was like, it looks like everyone was just allowed to make.
Oh well, all of these are official like lore chapters, but of course, any player in the world can make their own color scheme and their own symbols, and then declare their own kind of thing,
which is cool.
Yeah, it's a cool little thing. It gives you a good
immersive
a good way to like be like, oh, I'm kind of part of the story kind of thing. So yeah, this was done entirely to stop another Horus from happening. so no one person could have the power of an entire legion at their side. And this also switched.
Probably a good thing.
Great. It's a great idea. This switched the Space Marines from being the primary force of the Empire to a smaller, specialized planetary assault rapid reaction unit, which left the majority of the fighting to the much larger Astra Militarum, otherwise known as the Imperial Guard, and their counterpart, the Navis Imperialis, or the Imperial Navy. So now normal humans were the bulk of the human fighting force, not the super soldiers. The Space Marines, who are now officially known as the Adeptus Astartes, would maintain their original Legion names and colors and create the new chapters under them, like we talked about. An example is the Black Templars, are a very famous one, who are part of the Imperial Fists Legion originally. The majority of these chapters are still in use today, serving the Empire. And during this time, Guilliman would meet with a guy called Archmagos Dominus, that's his title, Belisarius Cawl is his name, and he's the leader of Mars. He's like the leader of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the robo people from Mars, the tech priests.
Like, damn, these names are wild.
Yeah, Archmagos Dominus Belisarius Cawl is his name. He charged Cawl with two important tasks for the future. First was, you need to figure out a way to bring me back from the dead if I die, because the Empire needs me. That's what he said first. And secondly, because he just trusted no one. He didn't think anyone was a good person except for him, which in the lore of Warhammer, he's right. The second was to develop an even stronger variant of Space Marines called the Primaris Project. And these would be improved upon by the Emperor's original designs in every way, heavily improved from the knowledge of from the failures of the Horus Heresy. After this meeting, he would go back to start purging worlds of chaos, going planet to planet, clearing most of them out. And on the year 121 of the 31st millennium, he arrived on the planet of Thessalia. And on Thessalia, he met his former brother Fulgrim, the demon primarch of the Emperor's Children chapter.
I remember his name because I said it to myself a lot later.
They're the Slaanesh Marines. And they would have a great duel on this planet, and during this encounter, Fulgrim would strike Robbie right in the neck with his poisoned blade, fatally injuring him. Guilliman was that? No, not good.
This is not good.
Guilliman was able to survive his retreat, however, and he ended up being transported in a stasis field to his home planet of Macragge, or Macragge, I don't know how you say it, the homeworld of the Ultramarines. He would be entombed in a massive shrine, known as the Shrine of Guilliman, where he was kept in a stasis field, but he was dead. He's dead.
Yeah.
So his shrine was basically the capital of the Ultramarines and also a massive pilgrimage site for all of mankind. After his death, the High Lords of Terra would be formed to rule over the Empire, which is a group of 12 of the most powerful and highest-ranked officials of the Imperium of Man. And they would carry out the day-to-day duties of governing and watch over the Empire, and totally probably not corrupt.
Yeah, no, they're fine. They're good guys.
That I'm sure nothing bad will come of that. The Great Scouring would end with the 10 millennia area where we see the story today known as the Age of the Imperium. This is 30 to 40, where we're going in now. This would be the galaxy that exists on a near apocalyptic level of destruction, trying to recover as best as it can under a crazy shifting rule of the Empire, as well as constantly being attacked by threats old and new, like Eldar and Orcs, and now constant raids of chaos. So now we go into part 2, which is the Age of the Imperium begins. And the first part isn't that bad. It's called the Time of Rebirth. This goes from 31 to 32 millennium, so about 1,000 years, where the Imperium began to recover and rebuild again. The era of imperial peace and reconstruction would, however, come to a pretty quick end because when there's that much destruction and your soldiers are out, there's a lot of openings in your defenses. And who better to take advantage of that than orcs?
Oh.
So
I almost forgot about those guys.
The greenskin attacks grew so bad that it was the greatest orc invasion the galaxy had ever seen. Even bigger than the one that the Emperor and Horus have fought against the beginning of the Primarch Search, which was like a famous conflict. So there were so many orcs, it actually became known as the War of the Beast, where a mysterious orc war boss, known only as the Beast, led a massive orc war, which is the term for like unorganized orc assault. Through
Is that the same thing in the other Warhammer as well?
Yep, correct.
Because I'm fairly certain you talked about it once before.
Yep. WAAGH exclamation point is the correct spelling. So he led this war through the entire empire, ravaging many worlds until he was finally stopped by the Lord Commander of the Imperium and Chapter Master of the Imperial's 5th Space Marines, a man named Corland, who would actually die to the Beast in a 1-versus-1 duel in a final battle.
Oh, that's no good.
The aftermath of this battle was a reorganization of the Inquisition, based on newly cultivated human-wide fear of Xenos from the War of the Beast. They would create multiple divisions known as Ordos, such as the Ordo Malleus, which would carry on the Inquisition's original goal, stopping chaos incursions, and now the new Ordos Xenos, which would defend humanity from any alien attacks and alien threats and try to root out any potential alien infiltration.
Mm-hmm.
They would also
no foreigners.
Yeah, they would also create something called the Chamber Militant. Now, the Chamber Militant were the military forces of each of these Ordos, and they didn't think any humans were good enough to do this, so they got Space Marines. And they formed 2 unique Inquisition Space Marine chapters, which, again, because the Inquisition's above the law, don't need to follow chapter regulations. And the first one they've got were called the Grey Knights. The Grey Knights are a fan favorite. They are basically the paladins of Warhammer 40,000. These are known also as the Demon Hunters, and they are like they're all Psychers. So they were recruited from Psyker Space Marines.
Okay, wow. So they're very big.
Yeah, they're
everything is so big.
They're huge knights who wear lots of big power armor and are Psychers, so they can detect chaos around, which is why they're known as Demon Hunters. The next would be a highly secretive chapter of Space Marines, which the Grey Knights were as well. Like, they weren't known, the Grey Knights were the highly secretive one. The less secretive chapter of Space Marines called the Death Watch. Now, the Death Watch were the opposite side. They were the militant force of the Ordos Xenos, and what the Death Watch were actually just veterans of other chapters who were specialists at killing aliens, such as orcs and Eldar. So they would recruit from different chapters. They would get together, and it was very common for Space Marines to be like, "Oh, you are now serving your 4-year Death Watch duty tour." So, like, for 4 years, they would go fight in the Death Watch against Xenos, then come back to their chapter, kind of thing, and they would get special honors. And usually, you would see elites and veterans of a chapter with like Death Watch badges on their power armor.
Now, this may seem like a silly question, but I mean it. Does anyone at any point get a vacation?
Oh, Space Marines? I think so. We actually do know in the lore what a lot of Space Marines do in their downtime.
Oh.
Now, since they are like serving, like they are like brothers, like they're like a family, right? They kind of like don't go like vacation, but sometimes I think for months on end they don't do much because they're waiting to just like be given a mission, kind of thing. Like, for example,
so they're probably just like dicking around.
So literally, the Iron Hands Space Marine chapter are online gamers. That is canonically what they do. Is they play games online.
Oh my god, that's actually awesome.
Yeah, the Blood Angels, who have a defect which makes them like vampires, to keep themselves calm, they paint minis.
Oh my god.
So, they all each chapter has its own thing. Like, Ultramarines just like pray and polish their weapons because they're a bunch of fucking dweebs. But like,
that's not good.
Yeah, that's what we have. So yeah, so that's the Ordos. So this is how the Inquisition is now, and at this point, they're already very powerful. They're an extremely powerful group of the part of the Empire. So the next part we have is going to be from 32 to 35 in the Millennium, and this is a time period known as the Forging. Some historitors, as they say in the High Gothic of Warhammer 40,000, refer to it as the Golden Age of the Imperium. This is the furthest out worlds that were human settled but not reached during the Great Crusade. Like, there was like the original way back when humans sent those massive ships we talked about called void arcs out. Some of those have still not been connected all this time. Like they're so far away that they never got contacted.
Yeah.
So this is when that ended. Every world is now getting brought into the fold as they were able to like move out there stably with warp travel.
Okay. Yeah, there's so many details about this universe that you just forget about. And you're like, oh yeah, they did launch a bunch of ships into the void.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, so literally, their empire was now reaching the opposite ends of the galaxy from Terra.
That's cool.
And what this did was make besides the borders grow dramatically, the astropaths and the astronomicon that guides people had to be expanded. So they created a thing called the astropath choirs, which were groups of psychers who would be on major worlds, basically helping the Emperor keep his astronomicon up. So you would basically like plug yourself into a machine as a psyker and live in the warp basically mentally, and keeping a beacon going so people can find you and stuff.
Okay.
It's a shit life. So
It's a glorious purpose.
yeah, but glorious purpose.
I am a street lamp.
This period saw the gradual decline of technology from the pre-heresy height as well. A lot of technology was starting to like get taken away by the more powerful groups and less to the people. And the growth of interstellar economy actually started to boom, however, because those STCs we talked about last time, those little template things that can make anything, started to be discovered for the first time since then. So for about 20,000 years, humans were now recovering this old stuff, and that was, if a planet was thought to have it, it made it a very popular planet, so they would have a big boom. During this time, the Empire was always the subject of chaos renegades and aliens of all kinds attacking their worlds. The Emperor, who was always an object of veneration and divine worship by small cults, remained on his throne powering the Astronomicon, and what they cults saw this as was his ascension from being a physical to a spiritual being, which heavily revived the movement of the cults who worshipped him. The imperial cults would dedicate themselves to worshipping him as the one true god of humanity, and this would do nothing but increase over the coming centuries. They would organize into a centralized faith known as the Temple of the Savior Emperor.
Okay.
This church started as a cult, but grew vastly in power and would convert masses of imperial individuals on major worlds. It got so big that the Lords of Terra themselves even began worshipping the Emperor, and in the 32nd millennium, it was granted the status of the official state religion of the Imperium.
And then that's finally, they were tax exempt.
Yeah, the imperial cult was finally now there. It's here, and it became known as the Adeptus Ministorum, or the Ecclesiarchy, as it's more commonly called. And their leaders would be called the Ecclesiarch. A few centuries after this, Ecclesiarch Venerus II would get his seat among the High Lords of Terra, and after 300 years, that seat would be reserved for governance of the church and sat in by the Ecclesiarch, who got a permanent seat in the Senate of man.
Only took 300 years. It's about time God and the government decided to... Never mind.
So now the church was, basically like officially a seat in the government.
And that's no good.
In the 33rd millennium, an event called the War of the Confessor unfolded, where a violent display done by the Ecclesiarchy exerted its newfound political strength and founded what is known as shrine worlds. Basically, they made holy planets, and they did that forcefully. Anyone who was there and didn't want it would get slaughtered. And this was the first ever war of faith for the Empire.
You know, it's funny. Last time we were talking about this last week, and while I was playing Darktide with you guys a little bit, I remember just thinking to myself, I'm like, I didn't hear anything about crazy religion or worshiping the Emperor. No one was doing that then. Everyone was just... In fact, even the Emperor himself was like, nah, don't do that. I'm just a person. I'm just a man.
Part of his
and
creed was, I'm a man, not a god.
Yeah. Yeah, and now people are worshiping
kind of got
like
forgotten.
a god.
But again, none of the Primarchs are around. So...
True.
They're all gone now, or demons. So it's like all the loyalist Primarchs are gone. So there's no one to like say otherwise. So this everyone starts doing it. The Space Marines start worshiping it. The Inquisition takes it as a religion. Everyone starts worshiping these dudes. And then, humans live about 120 years at this time period. So, like, after a couple generations, it's now normal.
We need a second coming of the Emperor, where he comes back and is like, guys, I'm just a man, even though I'm still alive.
Well,
or am I?
We'll see if he comes back or not. The church had officially taken over day-to-day life in the Empire, and with all trillions now actively worshiping the Emperor as a god, the religious fervor did nothing but grow over time. In the year 615 of the 33rd millennium, a ship called the Blade of Infinity emerged from the warp. And this was interesting because this ship was from before the heresy.
Oh my.
And this ship had a re-entry signature suggesting it left real space over 20,000 years ago.
My goodness.
So there's two major things about that. That is from before that was before Emperor. That was pre-Emperor times. And that was also pre-warp drive times.
Yeah, so where'd they come from?
So that suggests that the warp is capable of radical time stream rearrangement.
So what happened to the ship?
So they came out, and they had a bunch of Vox transmissions coming out from the ship that suggested it was sending out a warning, saying something's coming. A bunch of the Empire was like, whoa, we got to go get these dudes. Like, what is going on? Like, they were super curious. They really wanted to know what was going on. So they sent a bunch of people out there, led, of course, by the Inquisition in case they have to censor it.
Of course.
But, however, as they showed up, the Blade of Infinity once again entered the warp. And behind it came out an entire fleet, for the first time invading, of Chaos Space Marines.
Oh, no.
So the Chaos Space Marines made their first attack, wreaking havoc across the sector the Blade of Infinity was in. They would be fought back, and they would retreat back into the warp, but the Blade of Infinity would continue to reemerge from the warp for the next couple thousand years, and every single time heralded a large invasion of Chaos Space Marines.
Damn.
So yeah.
But does people figure out if the Blade of Infinity is in cahoots or if it's being chased or something?
No idea. It'll show up again, but we still don't know exactly what the deal with this ship is. The 401st year of the 34th millennium marked another great tragedy because we can't keep going down without taking some bigger steps down.
Yeah, of course.
The Black Templar Space Marines were on a crusade, and they ended the life of a cybernetic alien psyker known as Cacodominus. This psyker was so powerful that they were able to control the population of 1,300 different star systems with their mind.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so that was a problem. The Black Templars went and killed him. But what happened when a psyker this powerful was slain, remember how we talked about when things happen, they reflect in the warp?
Yeah.
So, of course, as a psyker who's directly connected to the warp, his death caused an event known as the Howling, which was a major death scream that was echoed by the warp and killed over 1 billion human astropaths who were connected to the warp at the time, keeping the Astronomicon lit.
Oh, so if you're in there at the time, you're basically, that means your lighthouse is gone.
Yeah, a lot of lighthouses went out, which allowed for millions of starships forever lost in the warp, as well as an entire subsector of the Imperium sliding once again into barbarism without the dictates of Terra to guide them.
Oh my god.
They lost all their astropaths, so they lost their ability to navigate the warp. So these whole sector just slid into anarchy.
So all the humans were just like, "Fuck it, chaos."
Well, they didn't go chaos, but they didn't know what to do,
right.
So they just kind of went
Chaos
fucking
is the
nuts.
right word.
And you are right. Yeah, fuck it, chaos, but not like ruinous powers chaos.
Yeah.
So the next part we're gonna go
that
into
could have been tempting, right?
Oh,
Isn't
if
that usually a precursor.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was many chaos cults formed during that time. It depends if chaos was there. If they showed up, then definitely.
Right.
The next part, for part 3, is called the Nova Terra Internum. Now, this was an era from millennia 34 to 35, which was a horrible period of imperial life, known as the time of the Twin Empires, translated to Nova Terra Internum. The empire split into warring factions for over 900 years, where a rebellious group known as the Council of Novaterra dismissed the authority of the High Lords of Terra and claimed separate rule for themselves over the Imperium's Segmentum Pacificus region of the galaxy. I actually do have a map that shows this kind of galaxy map and where it is. So, a pretty large section, as all you need to notice from the map, basically declared themselves their own human empire. So civil war even spread into the Adeptus Mechanicus, where different doctrinal ideas and cores of power would cause strife. The Martian Orthodoxy would wage war against the Cult Mechanicus, and even some smaller, more radical Forge World doctrines would rise up against the rulers of Mars, such as a Forge World known as Moirae. This was...
It's a Moirae.
M-O-I-R-A-E. Moirae? Moirae, I guess is how you would say it. This was one of the largest conflicts of doctrine since the Horus Heresy, where Moirae would be reduced to ash by a Martian fleet. But not before heretical writings from the world spread like wildfire through the priesthoods of Mars emails. Several Titan legions and space marines who were close with Mars, such as the Iron Hands, even got some of these ideas in their head. And it would be another 2,000 years of bloody war between the Admech factions and other forces of the Imperium before the doctrine was fully purged from all records.
Why are all wars in this universe like, oh, this war lasted 1,000 years, this one was 200
It's
years. There's no 5-year wars.
Oh, there is. And they're going to actually come at the end of this. But the reason why these ones take so long is because Space Marines are immortal, and so are the Tech Priests, because they're so cybernetic. You know, they don't have a human lifespan anymore, so they hold grudges for a long time. And with the time of space travel and the time of being very carefully going through all these records of countless millions of planets and having to delete all these emails, it's a lot of work.
Right. Going to a battle could take many years.
Yeah, exactly. And then making sure all record of it's deleted takes even more years. In the year 975 of the 35th millennia, the low-level civil wars came to an end during this era in an event known as the Cataclysm of Souls. Now, this was the ecclesiarchy trying to reform the empire into a theocratic government, and they were trying to usurp the High Lords of Terra to submerge any kind of political differences and reunite the galaxy with faith. Now, what this did, however, was stir up massive religious wars against the Council of Novaterra, who were officially denounced as heretics by the Church, but their planets were still ruled by the Church. So, since they were declared heretics, all their people rose up against them because they stood in defiance of the God Emperor's will, and they rejected the ecclesiarchy. So the Council ended up actually just being killed and fallen to their own people, and the people were given, citizenry back to the Imperium, and they ended up restoring the rule of the High Lords of Terra instead of the Ecclesiarch taking over.
Well, serves him right.
But it did cost about 1 billion lives, and the Ecclesiarch's power was increased to a dangerous level with this kind of control.
Okay. Well, good for them. You know, they're winning the game. It's all a big game, isn't it?
Yeah, it literally is. It's called Warhammer 40,000. After this, something called the Cursed Founding took place, which I just wanted to bring up real quick. It's they decided to make more Space Marine chapters, and the Adeptus Mechanicus tried to perfect the Astartes gene seed on their own, but they quickly learned that they weren't as good in genetics as the Emperor, and what happened was the creation of severely flawed gene seeds that would craft the organ implants for these new chapters. So,
want to know why the gene seeds were corrupted?
Why?
Vaccines.
Oh, no, 100%. They tried to put the Primarch vaccine inside of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tried to give him the COVID vaccine, and he was just kind of like, this makes my sperm not work.
At this time, it's COVID 35 million.
Yeah.
So these chapters would have severe flaws. They would develop unexpected mutations as time went on, which pushed the tolerance of the Inquisition. Some would even be set upon by Grey Knights, who would almost entirely wipe out their chapters. Those who would survive and flee ended up just turning to chaos and reinforcing existing traitor legions or starting their own traitor legions. So, pretty big fuck up. They just basically donated a bunch of Marines to chaos. Part 4, we have the Age of Apostasy, which is a word we love hearing in the Warhammer universe.
What's apostasy mean?
Apostates
For those who don't know?
would be a person who is wanted by the church, basically for being a witch who's unregulated. So The apostasy means it's the age of unregulated witches, basically, or unregulated religion, I guess. The Nova Terra Icternum period was nothing but foreshadowing for what was about to come, and the power struggles and descent that would consume the 36th millennia. Zeal was the word of the day for almost 1,000 years, and misrule would take over every single world. The word of the emperor that many so faithfully followed would be subverted wholesale by corrupt politicians and church leaders who wanted to control not just worlds, but the entire Imperium.
You talking about the far right?
Yep. And why we should have a war on Christians. No, I'm joking. So this era, the age of apostasy, would be one of the most brutal times the Empire would ever see after the Horus Heresy. Tyrannical leaders would repress star systems, and during a time known as the Reign of Blood, one such tyrant named High Lord Goj Vandire, whose picture we're bringing up right now, who was a madman.
He sounds like a fashion designer.
He doesn't look fashionable. He was a madman by all accounts.
Oh, God.
And he became not only the ecclesiarch of the Adeptus Ministorum, so he led the church, but he also was a master of the Adeptus Administratum, which meant he controlled the paperwork of the Empire. Through bribery, blackmail, coercion, and murder, he got his position.
Oh no, when his picture came up, I giggled because I was like, yeah, he looks like literally the villain of every story.
Mm-hmm. Yep. During his reign of blood, multiple wars of faith would be fought as he attempted to gain full political control of the Imperium. This would go on for 70 years until a man on a world called Dimamar named Sebastian Thor, and yes, he did have a lightning hammer, and his sect of the Imperial cult, the Confederation of Light, denounced High Lord Vandire as a traitor to the Emperor. So this sect, the Confederation of Light, was like, just take like a different, kind of like, like Christian has a bunch of different denominations. This is another one of those.
Right.
It was a rebirth of an ancient sect of the Imperial cult that rivaled the original temple, the Savior Emperor we mentioned earlier. So this was kind of like the Catholic versus Christian of the Emperor kind of thing. Right. And these were like the Christian style ones. They were a lot more moderate, a lot more relaxed in their religion. And they promoted a version of the imperial faith that sought individual salvation through faith rather than the pursuit of power.
That's good. That's the good kind of religion.
Yeah. So Thor was an accomplished orator, and with this, he was able to sway billions to his faith. This caused a galaxy-wide rebellion to erupt against Vandire. Eventually, the Astra Militarum and multiple Space Marine regiments sided with Thor and sieged Terra, where Space Marine orbital bombardments would wipe out most of the traitors once they were baited out into the open. Goj Vandire, however, would actually end up being assassinated by his own bodyguards, which, to throw a better image for how messed up he is, was a group of all-women warriors called the Brides of the Emperor.
I'm into it.
They were convinced by the Adeptus Custodes, who we mentioned in the first part, as the Emperor's gene seed Space Marines, who were super powerful.
Right.
They were convinced by them that Vandire actually tricked them into betraying the Empire, which was true. So the Brides of the Emperor assassinated Goj Vandire, and he officially died. And in the aftermath,
that's probably a good thing.
Sebastian Thor became the ecclesiarch, and he reformed the church along the lines of his Confederation of Light. The Imperium State Church promised to pursue a spiritual agenda over a secular one, and drastically reduced its power. The Brides of the Emperor would be transformed into today what we know as the Adeptus Sororitas, or the Sisters of Battle.
Cool.
And they would become the Ordo Militant of the new group of the Inquisition's Ordos that we talked about earlier with the Grey Knights and Death Watch. So these are their third military force now, who run the Ordo Hereticus, which is a order of...
They're hot.
Yep, they're hot ladies. And they were intended to root out the internal enemies of the Empire to prevent future civil wars and keep an eye on the Ecclesiarchy to make sure another Goj Vandire never happens. So now the Inquisition has three branches. They have one to fight chaos, one to fight aliens, and now one to fight heretics from within.
Damn. It's good to have different departments focused on different enemies, I suppose, right? That sounds good. Seems like a good thing.
So, Sisters
I'm
of
trying
Battle.
to find the golden lining with everything that's going on.
Sisters of Battle are pretty good. They're rad. We love them. They just got a huge revamp, and they're even better than ever. At the end of the Age of Apostasy, the Eye of Terror and other warp rifts visibly expanded. And the tech priests servicing the Golden Throne ended up needing more psychers to fuel the Emperor's growing appetite of psychic energy to power the Astronomicon. The Black Ships, which are fleets of ships led by Inquisitors to round up psychers across the galaxy, would increase in number and frequent their voyages to collect their tithes of psychers from worlds all over, and the Emperor now required 1,000 psychers a day to be sacrificed to him to keep him running the Astronomicon.
My God.
So, yeah.
I mean, you're going to run out at that rate.
I'm just saying. A godlike figure who grants you powers if you sacrifice to him sounds like another religion. Anyway, Part 5, Age of Redemption. In the 37th millennia, the Imperium would recover from the sins of apostasy, but the Imperial cult's zeal grew in forgiveness, where they would begin burning pyres of heretics for years on end on Imperial worlds, scourging the flesh of others to seek resolve of them from their sins against the God Emperor.
God Emperor!
Space Marines would launch multiple crusades to recapture the lost wealth of the Empire, while pushing back orcs, chaos, and other alien threats. The crusades would bring so many planets, guards, like military force, like Astra Militarum, from these planets would join these crusades, that a lot of planets were left with no defense.
Oh, yikes.
On the 10th year of the 37th millennia, an event called the Wrath of the Chaos Sun happened, which again set us back a bunch, where a giant red star at the heart of the male beta system exploded in an expanding cloud of warp flame. So this
would be the fucking male betas.
No, the betas, they really fucked us up, because this was not a normal star exploding. It was a chaos star exploding with warp flame.
Way to go, betas.
So what this did,
real alphas to take control here.
Instead of just like obliterating planets like a supernova would, instead it wrapped them in warp flame for hundreds of light years around them, and every one of those planets was either mutated beyond recognition or possessed by demons.
What would you prefer?
Demon, probably.
Got it.
Yeah. The High Lords of Terra ordered the mobilization of whatever forces available, so it was led by the Grey Knights, who were joined by a dozen other chapters, including countless Astra Militarum, Sisters of Battle, and Inquisitor fleets, who would band together to wipe out these demons and mutants, which also became the first time many people learned what the Grey Knights were.
Oh, because they didn't know they existed.
Yeah, but there was a huge demon war, and they were led by the demon killing specialists, so...
that must have been an incredible thing to be fighting on the side of the Imperium and whatever, and then think you're about to die, and then a gray... whatever, what do they call it again?
The Grey Knights.
Exactly? The Grey Knights just appear out of nowhere, and you're like, who the hell are you?
Yeah, giant-ass Space Marine, rad-ass looking armor. But what this actually did was these people working together would bond them and heal a lot of the wounds between the different parts of the Imperium that were damaged during Vandar's reign. So it actually it made the Imperium stronger than before. With this conflict, it ended up kind of like broing together. A little
bit of good news.
Yeah. Among the worst and most devastating events of the Age of Redemption is that of the Abyssal Crusade, where a saint of the Empire, Saint Basilius, found 30 Space Marine chapters wanting in their devotion to the Emperor, and the guilty would be sent directly into the Eye of Terror.
What else you got?
Yeah, well, this is why. Their salvation would be earned by retaking the world settled by mankind lost to the warp during the birth of Slaanesh.
Oh, yeah.
After battling on over 400 worlds, the Crusaders returned with literally only a couple hundred of them when they left with like 1 million people.
Oh, boy.
From each chapter, many fell to corruption and formed their own new Chaos Space Marine legions. And after the return of the Loyalist Crusaders, the Chaos Space Marine attacks would dramatically increase across the entire Empire, because now there was new Chaos Space Marines who were pissed off at the Empire. So once again, the Empire did a big donation of chaos. Just giving chaos more numbers to help us out. Towards the end of this era, in the late 37th millennium, a humanoid race would appear in space known as the Tau. and they would unite under a collectivist ideology known as the greater good in a caste-like society based in the elements with the fire caste, air caste, earth caste, and water caste, and they would undergo rapid development and advancement in large expansion into interstellar space, where they established their own empire called the Tau Empire. They settled a lot of worlds on the eastern fringe of the Milky Way, and the Imperium of Man would first come into them much later. This is the 37th millennium. They wouldn't meet them until the 41st millennium. But during this time, this is the new power in the galaxy that's showing up. The Tau are a fan favorite army. People really like them. They're kind of good guys. Little communists in the bad ways, but they out there. But the thing about the Tau to know is they're about as old as we are today. They're only about like 6,000 years old of a species. So right. They're much younger than anyone else. So it's kind of it's they're like the new kids in the block. They haven't been through an apocalypse, galaxy-wide apocalypse yet.
So they're still pretty like they're young and they're confident. They haven't. They're green. That's the phrase, green.
Yeah, but they do have a lot of powerful tech, so that's going to help them out. So now we're going into part 6 called the waning, which another term you don't want to hear listing your eras.
Not a good one.
Every branch of the Empire's military would become exhausted at this point. From the Redemption Crusades, which went to star system, being taken over by orcs due to the lack of military support on them. Chaos insurgency was at an all-time high. Things were looking pretty grim in the far reaches of the Empire, and the galaxy was about to witness for the first time what was known as a Black Crusade.
What is that? Oh, okay.
So these were crusades, much like how we mentioned before. That's what they call it, basically, the Space Marines, right? When they go do something, it's called a crusade. So This is one led by the forces of chaos. This era would last from M38, so the 38th millennium, to 750 of the 41st millennium, but basically where we are almost today in the current Warhammer stuff, where we saw many Black Crusades begin and destroy swaths of Imperial sectors with organized chaos attacks. The most prominent of all these would be the 12th Black Crusade, led by the successor of Horus, the War Master of Chaos, Abaddon the Despoiler. He was a champion of Chaos Undivided, as well as being the head of the Black Legion and the replacement for Horus. Abaddon could be his own whole episode. He is my favorite character in all of Warhammer. But I'm gonna give a short summary of who this dude is.
Okay.
So he was Horus's left hand during the Horus Heresy. He was always by Horus's side, and he was recruited from the same homeworld as Horus.
Oh.
He was a massive human in strength and height of his own before being a Space Marine. He killed his own gang lord father to take his place, which made him a prime recruit for the Luna Wolves Legion, and he quickly rose to prominence due to his power. He was so large, pre-upgrade, he was about 8 feet tall almost on his own.
Oh, damn.
So that when he got upgraded into a Space Marine and was massive, they actually had to create their own form of armor for him called Terminator armor, which is now well known as that's like a super Space Marine. But he couldn't even wear normal Space Marine power armor because he was too big to fit in it. During the Heresy, he was the most valuable warrior of the Sons of Horus, and he was always Horus's right-hand man. He led the Black Legion after Horus's death to dominate other Chaos Legions inside the Warp, with the help of the Wordbearer Legion kind of allying, another undivided Legion allying beside him. And at the end of this, he gained the title among Chaos as War Master, just as Horus was. And now, he's been superpowered by all 4 Chaos Gods and has obtained the power status similar to Horus of a Primarch, if not even stronger. The 12th Black Crusade is known as the Gothic War, where Abaddon used chaos magic to summon a massive warp storm to cut off the Gothic sector of space from the Empire and completely ruined thousands of worlds until the warp storms dissipated and the Empire finally arrived, where Abaddon had to retreat to the warp once again. But in the end, we did see several planets be destroyed, and he also destroyed 4 of 6 things known as Blackstone Fortresses.
What's a Blackstone Fortress?
I just brought a picture of one up, which funnily kind of looks like an 8-pointed star, weirdly enough. These are ancient creations by the Old Ones from way, way, way back in the day. And what this crusade actually did was discover the purpose of them. And what they were space stations that were able to, that were meant to fight the Necrons back then, which were able to destabilize the star of a solar system, blowing up the entire system.
Well, that's helpful. It's like a little Death Star, kind of.
It's even worse. It's a bunch of Death Stars. Two of the Blackstone fortresses of the 6 in existence were captured by Abaddon and his Black Legion and taken back into the Eye of Terror. So there was only 6 ever made. He blew up 4 and took 2.
Yeah, that's not good for the mortals, or the light people.
The loyalists is what is a good way to put it.
I want to really call it them.
So now we're up to the 41st millennium. So we're in 40k now. In the year 500, an event known as the Tears of the Emperor took place, where a psychic vision struck psychers all over mankind, even in the backwater feral worlds, to densely populated hive cities, saw a vision in their head of the Emperor on the golden throne with tears coming out of his empty eye sockets.
Oh.
Although the dream itself took many different forms, the Emperor sent this message out not as him weeping for himself, but for the darkening plight of humanity.
No shit. Well, at least his consciousness is still
around. Yeah, he's conscious. He's conscious for sure. The plight was upon man, for sure, because the 41st millennium, many worlds began to stir out of seemingly nowhere. Unsuspected humans suddenly saw horrific scenes of devastation as they saw humanoid metal men start to rise from the ground, coming out of the earth, wiping out their entire worlds, as the Necrons had returned.
Oh no!
It
took so long.
Necrons, after
so glad to see them again.
After their millions years of sleep, the Necrons finally woke up and began their conquest of the galaxy once more. What exactly awoke them is unknown. Thought maybe to be Adeptus Mechanicus exploratory fleet that disturbed the Tomb Worlds, or maybe a major conflict between the Ultramarines and the Tau over what turned out to be a Tomb World. This is a massive conflict that happened where the Necrons rose up in the middle of the battle and started killing both sides. And the Ultramarine chapter master, Marnius Calgar, actually ended up brokering a peace with the Tau, which is an extremely foreign concept to the Empire, where the Ultramarines literally just let the Tau go. They're like, just leave. We're not going to shoot you, which they didn't. The Tau were allowed to get off-world and go back to their homes before the Space Marines put in the order for what is called an exterminatus. This would be a full force of the Emperor's orbital weapons to reduce a world into dust, which they did, stopping a Necron Tomb World from fully rising.
Well, that's good they got one of them.
Yep, one of a couple 100 million. Another more likely reason that they started to wake up is because something was happening. There was an oncoming presence of dark shadow in the warp that was disturbing reality, and something was moving towards us that is very dangerous and caused what is known as the shadow of the warp. The Necrons, however, despite waking up and doing everywhere, they weren't doing so hot. Many of their tomb worlds either failed to put them in sleep, or they were deteriorated after 60 million years of sleeping.
Yeah.
Or they had their own cataclysmic events happen that would destroy them or break their machines. Thousands of tomb worlds would never wake up, period, and some new ones are discovered and wake up even today. They're just late to the party. They were united in the Silent King's vision of a shared universe, but many tomb worlds had their leaders didn't really see eye to eye with each other, and they would have their own civil wars.
Okay, so basically they just became a brand new species again.
Mm-hmm. Like they're kind of back, and their leaders are like, I didn't like this guy. Let's just kill him before everyone else wakes up. And they'll say, oh, he didn't wake up. Like that's kind of, like the Necrons are petty assholes. Like they're kind of this Terminator end world for like Borg like world ending threat, but they're also just led by a bunch of very human, unreasonable assholes.
That's kind of funny, actually. It's like, oh no, the technology's taking over. Well, you were kind of mean to me the other day at dinner. What are you talking about? That's so petty. It's like, wait, what?
There's even like stories of Space Marines fighting Necrons who then begin fighting each other because their own civil wars are going on.
Oh my god, that's awesome.
There's also entire lost tomb worlds the Necrons themselves are afraid to enter due to glitches in the sleep cycles of these worlds that cause them to wake up
Ooh.
early but not get out of the tomb worlds and go literally insane. And they're run by insane automatons, and these are known by as sever worlds. And they also are generally just left to their own devices, but they're the cause of some things such as the Flayer virus, which is a computer virus that goes through Necrons that turns them into basically zombies, where they just kill people and cover themselves in their skin for fun.
Okay.
Yeah, the Necrons they're not doing too good. They're out there, but they're a big threat, and they're very dangerous. Their weapons are way more advanced than the Empires or the Elves or the Orcs. So like they're dangerous, but they're kind of idiots.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But at least they're stupid as hell. Like if they got their shit together, they could be the most deadly fighting force in the entire galaxy. But they're so goddamn dumb.
Yeah. So that happened. From the year 744 to 999 of the 41st millennium, we have what is known as a time of ending, and this saw humanity at war as never before. Since the Horus Heresy, there was more wars going on than ever, which is being basically because they're being attacked by rebels from within, of course, which led to outbreaks of heresy and chaos corruption. Orcs are attacking from every side. Eldar show up randomly and start fighting. Dark Eldar show up and start fighting. The Tau, who are new, start showing up and fighting for worlds. Necrons are rising up and besieging all over. And spoiler, it was about to get a lot worse. Mutants and witches were being born at an accelerated rate, likely due to the proximity to warp-related attacks or storms. Many of the Zealots saw this as mankind's punishment, as well as Xenos, for their sins against the Emperor's vision. Astropaths were witnessing something that was perhaps the worst of all, as the warp was getting dark and hard to see through, and was rippling, because something was coming that these Astropaths couldn't comprehend. The Tau...
So the shadow's basically like the long night, right?
Yeah, something in the warp is fucking up everything.
It's gonna be like the end of all things, basically.
So the Tau Water Caste, which is kind of like their like economy caste, had established trade with the Empire, which is new. An exchange of technology and goods became common in a part of space called the Damocles Gulf. And this made these worlds benefit greatly. But soon, the Administratum caught on, and the Inquisition noticed this, and the threat of Xenos contamination was seen as too great, and the Damocles Crusade began. The Empire led a full-force assault against the Tau Empire and smashed through their defenses, forcing them getting deep into Tau's core territory, destroying many of the Tau's newly settled worlds. Eventually, a stalemate was met when the Tau forces arrived, and their advanced technology proved to be an equal match for the might of the Empire, and they just started grinding assaults against each other.
Classic World War I.
Yeah. On the 742nd year, peace talks ended successfully, and the Empire was allowed to withdraw unmolested, as were the Tau.
That's good.
3 years later, a new threat arrived, as this shadow in the warp showed up, finally physically in form, and we saw the first high fleets of the Tyranids.
What's that? I don't know what that is. Oh god, they're awful looking.
These massive organic fleets, known as Tyranids, would arrive in the Milky Way galaxy, revealing the physical identity of the shadow of the warp. And when they arrived, they wiped out system after system without any competition. Arriving first in the system of Tyran, which is why they're called Tyranids, and then the system of the whole entire sector of Thandros would fall to the Tyranid invasion. Later that year, they descended upon Ultramar, the home fiefdom of the Ultramarines, laying waste to several worlds, and with the support of the Imperial Navy and Ultramarines, they actually ended up fighting back and successfully, for the first time, defeating a Tyranid invasion. However, the Ultramarines lost most of their chapter during this war.
Goddamn.
The Tyranids are a hive-mind organic species capable of deep space flight entirely on their own biological functions, and they come from a different galaxy. So they're basically as alien as you can get, and they are unable to be spoken with or negotiated with, and they want nothing more than to consume what they refer to as biomass, basically being any organic material, from rocks to trees to sand to people.
So you can communicate with them, But they just basically are like, yeah, but we're going to eat you.
I don't think you can.
And the desk
you can't communicate with them at all, but through other reasons, which we'll get to in a little bit, we know a little bit more about them.
Sure. Okay.
There was another side effect to this, which was a creature called a gene stealer, which I'll put a picture right now. So gene stealers are a type of Tyranid. They're one of the Tyranids have a bunch of different types. They constantly are evolving and making different forms of themselves for different purposes. So gene stealers were around, and these things have been around since the 30th millennium. They've been hanging around the galaxy. Well, people just thought them as another kind of weird fringe alien species. People didn't understand what they were, and now it's revealed that these were Tyranid scout forces that were sent forward to explore the galaxy, and these guys have independent thought. But they reconnect to the hive mind when they show back up, and they absorb all the information the gene stealer learned.
Oh, that's convenient.
So they already knew everything about the Empire, everything about Chaos, everything with the Necrons. They had seen everything they've seen. The Hive Fleet immediately learned.
Okay, so how does Chaos feel about these guys?
Chaos doesn't like them at all. They just kill them on sight. They're just as everyone else. Everyone fights Tyranids equally. There's no Tyranid ally. So, like everyone kills them.
Hilarious.
They're just like...
I never thought there would be anybody who would ally with the Chaos Legion. So
no one allies with the Chaos.
Like,
no, sorry. No one allies with the Chaos Legion. But if there was a Tyranid threat and the Chaos showed up, they would fight both sides equally.
Okay.
They're not going to... Chaos will never ally with the Loyalists.
The
Hive Fleet showed up. They fought on Ultramar, the Hive Fleet behemoth, but they were fought back, and they're kind of pushed back out to the fringes of the galaxy. The Tyranids were kind of at bay for now. And in 757, the 4th millennium, we saw something happen called the Zombie Plague break out on the world of Hydra Minoris, which would be quarantined by the Imperial Navy and was soon discovered to be none other than a chaos infestation pox by the god Nurgle, which they officially named the zombies Poxwalkers, but people still call them zombies normally. And if you've played Darktide, you've seen plenty of Poxwalkers.
Is this basically what Darktide is?
Yeah, it's the pole. That's just a lot of times when the Death Guard, the Nurgle Marines, kind of attack a place, the first phase is to pox everybody. Is they spread the zombie plague. Just kind of soften everything.
That's a great first move.
Yeah, exactly. Makes it easy to kind of come in. So in 941, Millennium 41, we saw what was called the Second War of Armageddon. This is a very, very, very popular. This was I think it's a 7th edition Warhammer. People love the War of Armageddon. It's a huge part of the lore where the largest and strongest orc in millennia, Warlord Ghazghkull Mag Uruk Thraka, led the biggest war scene into the Empire to end on the world of Armageddon. Pull up a picture of Ghazghkull right now because we all love him. He's massive. You can see him next to a Space Marine, which is massive, and get a good size idea of how big this orc is.
Wow.
They were, however, defeated by none other than an Imperial force of the Astra Militarum led by the now legendary heroics of Commissar Yarrick of the Astra Militarum. And Ghazghkull would, however, escape, vowing one day to return to take Armageddon for himself. Armageddon is one of the biggest worlds of the Empire. It's a massive factory world. The entire planet looks like Coruscant, it's an entire hive planet. So it's a huge deal. The year 691. Sorry, 969. Sorry, nice. The Blade of Eternity appeared once again. This ancient ship shows up. So people get the messages. The Blade of Eternity is back, and they know now that the Blade of Eternity heralds chaos invasion. So they send a force to go meet it. But instead, when they arrived, the Blade of Eternity was gone, and what's there instead is the Death Guard's plague ship Terminus, who spreads the zombie plague throughout many Imperial ships, and an entire star system gets covered with the zombie plague, and this star system's refugees get infected unknowingly, and then leave, and carry the plague throughout the entire Empire.
Do you think all the Chaos Gods just kind of go all right, it's your turn, Nurgle. What do you got? Cracks knuckles, and he's like, I'm going to spread the plague. Check this shit out.
Literally?
All right, give it a shot.
Literally, kind of, yes, actually. That is kind of how it
All right,
works.
Slanesh, you're up. What are you going to do? I'm going to send a giant wave of cum. All right, Slanesh.
Oh my god, I told you it's not going to work again. It's just going to make a giant cloud and spit. Oh, he did it anyway. Classic Slanesh move.
Look, Slanesh, they're flying around it. They're just flying around it.
So the zombie plague was spread around. It's a problem today. It's probably why they're there in like Darktide. Like it just kind of shows up everywhere now because of this event, which is why I brought it up. Another chaos incursion happened and broke out on the Cadian fortress world of Lutoris Epsilon, which, if you don't know, Cadia is the planet that guards the Eye of Terror for the Empire, so it's a huge deal. And all the planets around it are kind of called fortress worlds. And these are like the most defended military planets of the Empire, ready to fight chaos at a moment's notice, which is exactly what happened, as they were invaded not by Chaos Space Marines, but by Khorne. And his bloodthirster leader, Scarbrand, materialized in the planet, causing a massive blood rage as the planet literally started raining blood and chaos demons such as bloodthirsters, which, you know, if you play Total Warhammer 3, you know those demons they got.
Oh, yeah.
That's what these things are. So it's not a Space Marine Legion. This is just actual demon armies started attacking this planet. And as the planet began raining blood, hordes of blood demons arrived and took over the whole planet, and the Empire had such a problem trying to even attack it from orbit that they basically just had to quarantine the planet. And it's now called a Forbidden World, and it acts basically as a home base for Khorne demons in real space.
That's so unfortunate that's the best that they can do.
Yeah, so nothing leaves the planet, but it's there.
Yeah.
So we'll see if anything ever happens to that. Nothing hasn't really been brought back, but maybe it'll show up again. 993, the 41st millennium, the Ultramarines were sent out to crush a rebellion on an industrial world called Ikar 4, only to find out this was no mere rebellion. Remember how we talked about those Tyranid Gene Stealer scouts earlier?
Oh, yeah.
Turns out they do something a lot worse than just scout.
Oh.
And we're going to go into that.
Oh.
We're going to go into what they do. This is what Gene Stealers do. So this is sourced from the Codex, as well as multiple short stories that Games Workshop's posted in recent years, because they kind of had a big resurgence of this recently. So what Gene Stealers do is they hide out in ruins of space, waiting for salvage ships to arrive, and then they sneak on board, usually hiding in a crate. Keep in mind, as you can tell by this picture, these are large, human-sized, four-armed, clawed, fanged, acid-spitting aliens, so they're very capable of defending themselves.
Yeah, and probably not easy at hiding.
No, well, they can kind of like they would hide in like giant shipping crates, right? So they would find ways to sneak onto ships, hide in different parts of the ships, right? And they would end up arriving back on worlds of the Empire. The Gene Stealers would then find a nice place to hide on this world, usually like a sewer or bottom levels of a populated hive city, and they would establish a kind of nest there. Now, next, what the Gene Stealers do is they go out at night looking for some kind of bar or nightclub or strip club, some kind of red light district thing, right, where people gather and get drunk.
Right.
And then it grabs a male or female human and gives them what is known as the Gene Stealer's kiss. Now,
yeah, it's illegal.
This is literally what it is. They tongue them in the mouth. And this knocks him unconscious, and their tongue then goes a bit deeper than the mouth. In fact, it goes all the way as deep as it can go, basically, for a couple minutes as the Gene Stealer begins to edit the genes of their prey. This person is then wakes up, either left where they were or back home, or if their friends took them back home or whatever. And they wake up and they don't remember the last night, they don't remember what happened, but they're really horny. Extremely horny. And they continue on as normal, but as time goes on, this urge to mate with a member of the opposite sex is a primal core level drive that stops at nothing, and they will do it even forcefully if they have to.
Oh no.
The victim or willing participant of this mate, let's say for example it was a male who got the kiss, then does the deed willingly or non-willingly with a female. The female then gets pregnant from the encounter at about 100% chance of success. Pregnancy will happen, even if the person was sterile before, seemingly. And then this pregnancy begins to edit the genes of the partner. And this person will become obsessively protective of the baby, usually as a couple. Even if it was unwilling, they now are obsessed with each other because they just need to protect this baby at all costs. The whole time, unbeknownst to them, they are currently now connected to what is called a brood mind, which is a smaller Tyranid hive mind started by the gene stealer that made the kiss in the first place.
Oh, no.
The baby is usually born heavily mutated, often with 3 arms, and is known as either an aberrant or a metamorph. And these are large, dumb brutes or human-sized creatures that look almost exactly like a gene stealer, but with a bit more human features. They usually have to be protected by the parents because they can't really go out into society like this. But some do, like the aberrant. Well, I mean, like when they grow up as adults, these aberrants are so big that sometimes they're just seen as mutants or abhumans, similar to ogres, and just allowed to work in like mines, for example. Labor-intensive jobs because they're so good at it because they're like massive, like 8-foot tall fucking behemoth people with 3 arms. They're really good at working labor jobs.
Yeah, I bet.
So these aberrants or metamorphs will then do their own deed where they breed with another person, usually a human, forcefully or not, and these will create what are known as hybrids, or fully functional individuals who have 3 arms, but are often, more than not, very similar to like humans and passable as humans with a 3rd arm. They then do the same thing and carry their gene to the next generation, called the true hybrid, who are almost identical to humans, but they don't grow body hair and they have small little crests on their forehead right above the eye bridge. Finally, this generation will go back to the source, and their kids come out as pure-blooded, pure-strain gene stealers, identical to the original one on the world who started it in the first place, who at this time has now evolved into a massive, powerful Tyranid psyker known as a broodlord. So,
damn, so these guys play the long game.
Yeah, so back to the Ultramarines arriving to put down a rebellion on the planet of Istan 5, they recognized the gene stealers were here, but they didn't understand why the local guard was fighting side by side with Tyranids. This was due to the gene stealers gaining full control of the world over a couple generations and its guard by spreading the mutations of true hybrids who would then join the military, become leaders of the military on the planet, and form what is now known today as a gene stealer cult. The rebellion was no match for the force of the Ultramarines, but they soon learned that that's not the role of a gene stealer cult, and what they actually are is a massive homing beacon for the Tyranid hive fleets to land, and soon the new hive fleet Kraken arrived from outer space, absorbing the gene stealer cult world into their biomass and all the intelligence they learned the whole time. So this added a whole nother threat to the Empire of Man, as now they can be infected by Tyranids from within and not even know it. So as you can see by the picture I brought up now, you can see the different generations, like the further back ones and the one on front. They're more kind of gene stealery looking, while the dude right in the front on the right is just basically looks like a bald dude. So the Tyranids Tyranid cultists are able to hide in plain sight. They worship the 4-armed Emperor, which is it's like a twisted mix of their gene stealer broodmine and the imperial cult religion.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
it all fuses together after a while.
So they're now a whole new threat. And this same year, who shows back up but Gazkol Thraka, the giant orc, arrives once again to take back Armageddon, facing his old nemesis Commissar Yarrick, once again in battle, but this time the orcs triumph, and the Commissar Yarrick is captured. And after being held captive for a short time, however, he releases Yarrick with no strings attached because he wants a better fight for the next time he shows up and only trusts Yarrick to give it to him.
Dude, I love orcs, bro. They're just so fucking... They're both dumb, but also have this weird thing. It's like Goku. It's like, I don't want you to die.
That's literally their life purpose. It's a good fight. So he's this guy. Gazgul is like, yeah, I beat you now, but you're the only one who can stand up to me. So go back and make a better army next time. So...
I want to do this again.
Yarrick returned to Armageddon for the third War of Armageddon, but this time the Empire was prepared. And the Empire, not willing to entertain Gazgul, ripped the fuck out of this dude's wah and obliterated it with the force of the Black Templar Space Marines, Imperial Fist Space Marines, Ultramarines, Even the Eldar kind of helped harass the orcs a little bit, and ended up being Ghazghkull ended up living because it ground to such a big stalemate at the edge of the Armageddon that he got bored and just left. So Ghazghkull was being chased through space by Yarick at the end of the war, and that's kind of the last update we got on that until very recently, where we found out they just kind of gave up. And Ghazghkull is kind of around still. He still is the biggest orc war boss, leading the Goth Space Marines, as they're called. And they're, Goth orcs, not Space Marines, against wars and Space Marines right now. But they're still out there. They're still out there somewhere. Next, we have the year 999 of Millennium 44th Millennia. On the day 995, just before the dawn of the 42nd millennium, who shows up out of nowhere to terrorize everyone?
I'm gonna guess.
Yeah.
Who is who have we not mentioned in a while?
Oh no, he's coming back. It's only been a little while, but he's back. It's Abaddon the Despoiler.
Oh, god damn it. Okay, I was looking too far back. I was looking from last week.
No, he's back. He's back again with his 13th Black Crusade, coming out of the Eye of Terror with its sights set on the fortress world of Cadia, the home of the largest recruitment and largest military bastion of the Astra Militarum. Cadia was a beacon of hope for the entire empire and has been forever. Demons constantly siege the world of Cadia because it's close to the Eye of Terror, and so one of the phrases of the empire was "Cadia stands." That's like their famous saying. They would just say, "Well, Cadia stands." So
that's like how America's just kind of like, well, yeah, we still have Yellowstone.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, Yellowstone's still there, hasn't exploded yet.
Still really pretty. It's really pretty.
So Cadia stood triumphantly at the Eye and served as a gateway to the heart of the Empire, to Terra itself, and Abaddon wanted it for himself, and the chaos were vast at this time, more organized than ever before under their War Master, including other Chaos Legions such as Death Guard, the World Eaters, the Alpha Legion, the Thousand Suns, the Night Lords, all these things we mentioned last week. They're coming back, and here's the kicker.
Daddies.
Legions, dude, that's your own custom armor. You can go paint that if you want. Yeah. Hell yeah. The world, or the Death Guard, the Nurgle dudes, the Thousand Suns, the Tzeentch dudes, they have their own Primarch still, and they are still listening to the call of the War Master left by Horus, which is now Abaddon. So even the Primarchs are listening to Abaddon. He's so powerful, smacking them in line, saying, "You're fucking under me now. I'm the War Master of Chaos, and I'm fucking coming." And they renewed their assault on the hated corpse Emperor of Mankind. The largest military force since the Horus Heresy was mobilized and met them at Cadia. But despite that, in the initial assault, Chaos gained a foothold on the world for the first time ever. The most horrific battles fought were seen here in space and on the surface, and the defenders would soon learn that this was merely a precursor of the horrors of what would unfold when Abaddon himself would set foot on Cadia. The living Saint Celestine was even there, of the Adeptus Sororitas, literally like a fucking angel goddess, couldn't beat the War Master in combat, merely delaying him as they fought 1-1 on the surface. And the battle raged on, but it ended up being too late, as suddenly Abaddon was just gone. And Abaddon returned to space with a secret weapon, a blackstone fortress known as the Will of Eternity, that exited the warp, appearing above Cadia. But before this weapon could be fired to blow up the system, a combined force of the Imperial Fist Space Marines and Space Wolf chapters engaged the Blackstone Fortress, getting inside of it and disabling its cannon. But when they were inside, they noticed this, for being a Blackstone Fortress, there wasn't many Traitor Space Marines on here. It's kind of weird it was so lightly defended to be able to do this. And then they learned that the engines were full force, firing towards the planet of Cadia, as the corpse of this not working Blackstone Fortress itself was the real weapon.
Ooh, gotcha.
Abaddon set the Will of Eternity directly into Cadia, which destroyed all life on the planet, splitting the world in two as it began to crumble, and the Eye of Terror was finally able to consume the world of Cadia. Two major things about this. The first Chaos victory in lore. Yeah. Chaos bad guys won. So that's great.
Big time.
Secondly, something else was happening during this battle. Archmagos Call, Archmagos Dominus Basilius Call, who we mentioned before. He was there. He was there on Cadia.
You gotta use his full name.
Yeah, he was on Cadia. And he was on Cadia with a special guard looking into something called a Blackstone Pylon, which they were all over the surface of this planet. They're on other planets too. And he was trying to figure out what the fuck these things were, as it seemed like Abaddon's attacks were directly going towards them. So Abaddon knew what they were, but Call didn't, and that bothered him. So he was on this planet, and he actually made an unexpected ally named, I think his name is Tiersma, is how you say it, a Lord of the Necrons, who arrived and was helping out Call on this mission to get to the Blackstone Pillars. This very weird, unlikely alliance of Empire and Necrons, however, was a little too late, but he did learn what the purpose was. These pillars held back the warp from entering real space and were planted by the old ones at the beginning of time. And these were Abaddon's target the whole time, not Cadia. And with the planet sundered and the pillars gone, the Eye of Terror expanded rapidly into what is known as the Crimson Path, as it literally split the galaxy in half.
Wow, so just like the planet, the galaxy too.
So I pull up the map right now. You can see the giant purple line known as the Great Rift. That is the end goal of everything that happened, where the Eye of Terror just split the galaxy in half. And
is that Cadia to the left?
Yeah, so the very top left, you can kind of see the biggest thing where in purple it says the Eye of Terror, of Terror, and Cadia is right beneath it.
Yeah.
So Abaddon wasn't done. The Gate to Terra was destroyed, and he was going to make his way there.
Great.
But he was stopped by his own forces' inability to organize, and after such a great victory, Chaos, being Chaos, just kind of started to scatter and go back to their own little machinations and things at the ruins of Cadia. So he just said, fuck it, whatever, and established Cadia as the base of Chaos in the real space galaxy. So the ruins of that planet is now like where the Black Legion Space Marines kind of live. The Empire somehow got even worse news after this happened.
Well, the galaxy's been split in half, and that's not the worst of it. That's not the worst of it. Okay.
The Golden Throne was starting to fail.
Isn't that where the dead?
Yeah, that's where he's sitting. That's where he's sitting. The Adeptus Mechanicus could not figure out why, but Emperor was dying, and fast. So, looking out for other ways to help the Emperor, they even recruited the Dark Eldar, who sent scientists who were known to be some of the most advanced in the galaxy to this planet to try to work on it, and even they couldn't figure out what it was, so they got all murdered.
Oh no.
Archmagos Call made an alliance with Yannari, an Eldar faction who would meet together on Macragge, the Ultramarine homeworld. So the Eldar had officially made an alliance with the Empire, which is unheard of. And
is this gonna last?
They were able to stabilize the Golden Throne. It's not doing great, but it's not getting worse. So still a big worry is to figure out how to fix this thing. But what happened is they met on Macragge, the home world of the Ultramarines, and at the shrine, with Eldar magic and Admech science he'd been working on for 10,000 years, the Primarch Roboute Guilliman would rise from the dead, awakening from his 10,000 years of stasis field to a world under siege by chaos, as guess what? They just decided to attack at the same time, because Abaddon had a feeling this was happening, and he said, "No, fuck, no, don't let that guy get back up again." But unfortunately, Robbie G was back to life. Fortunately for the Empire, unfortunately for Chaos, as the Primarch was returned and immediately thrown into battle, where he was able to fight off Abaddon, who actually surprisingly held his own against Guilliman, showing how powerful Abaddon was, but he did end up losing the fight and getting away. But Guilliman was awake, and he was pissed off at everything. Everything going down. It's been 10,000 years, a lot of shit happened, and he didn't like it. And the entirety of the Ultramarines, including all its subchapters, gathered around to hail his return and embark on the Terran Crusade, where they would carve a path through space, killing all chaos in their way to Terra, and where nothing would stop Gilliman from meeting up with his father for a talk for the first time in 10,000 years.
I like the idea of, he'd be like, we're so happy you're awake. It's nice to see you again, Robbie G. And he's like, where the fuck is my dad?
What the fuck's going on with this place? Why is there a church above me? What is going on? So
why are we worshiping him like a god? This is weird.
We don't know what happened at this meeting exactly, but we do know he did telepathically have a conversation with the Emperor. And we also know that Gilliman got officially named Lord Commander and Imperial Regent of the Empire, once again becoming the leader as a whole, basically being the new Emperor. I pulled up a pic the official art of his coronation. You can see Bosarius Call being creepy as fuck behind him and giant.
Is honestly like Robbie G like the closest thing you get to a good guy?
Yes, 100%. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. There's no real bad stuff about him, and he fucking hates the church. He hates the ecclesiarchy. He wants it gone, but he lets it live because it's become too integral. It's too big. If he were to end it, it would cause way worse rebellions and probably more chaos. So he knows better than to just cut it out. So after this, Gilliman set out to fix some shit. And the galaxy is now in what is known as the Era Indomitus, which is where the Great Rift has split the galaxy in half. The northern half is cut off from the Astronomicon, so it can no longer be reached via warp travel. Worlds fell to chaos rapidly during this time, and until an event known as the Psychic Awakening occurred. This was a massive pulse of warp energy through the galaxy, which is likely caused, I don't know, maybe by a giant warp hole cutting the galaxy in half, where the Eldar saw their psychic powers greatly enhanced due to the rift. Humans all over began to manifest powers. Even if you weren't a psyker, you were able to manifest some powers sometimes. The Sisters of Battle in particular were now able to manifest powers such as like holy weapons and stuff like that and shields simply by praying to the Emperor. Gilliman also had a new toy. If you remember, 10,000 years ago, he ordered a package from Call, and it finally arrived. An upgraded Astartes known as the Primaris Space Marines. So, able to upgrade directly from a human base or an Astartes, the Primaris is about 2 feet taller than a normal Space Marine, so now they're about 10 feet tall, and is yet again stronger, faster, smarter, and even more resistant to chaos than ever before.
There we go. Love to hear it.
With these new Marines in hand, he set out to reunite man through the Great Rift, as well as meeting other chapters and giving them their Primaris gene seeds, allowing them to upgrade themselves. Space Marine chapters are kind of 50-50 on it. Some of them see them as kind of heretical and don't like the Primaris. Some of them are like, fuck yeah, give them to me. This, however, was met soon by a massive attack on Terra, led by Khorne. Khorne wanted to prove himself to be stronger than his brothers, and he led a massive assault on Terra, turning the polluted sky, which is normally a nice polluted orange, turning it red and making the blood fall down again. 88 cohorts of demon blood legions began to assault the Imperial Palace, which even the famed Guns of Terra could not stop. Luckily, however, they were met by the first battle of the Primaris Ultramarines, who came alongside the Custodes and the Sisters of Silence, which are another sect of, like, super warriors of the Empire. Led by Robbie G himself, they were able to turn back the massive Chaos Assault, and Khorne got so mad that his fortress in the warp trembled, and he obliterated 8 of his Bloodthirster leaders.
Okay.
Obliterating a demon in the warp means they can never come back. So he basically erased the existence of 8 demons. With big demons, big leader demons. Yeah. If you remember in like Total Warhammer 3, the Bloodthirsters are the big giant axe wielding double wing thing. Same thing in this. Big leaders. So now we go to the present time. On the 42nd millennium, where the Indomitus Crusade continues to link together the two halves of the galaxy. Luckily, the Empire did discover something called the Nakmund Gauntlet, which allows safe travel between the rift, and this let the Empire reconnect itself. Gilliman would cleanse these worlds with the might of his Primaris army alongside the Sisters of Battle in the Astra Militarum. Other chapters, such as the Imperial Fist and Black Templars, would follow along, doing the same work as him. A couple major events happened. First, the Vigilus Crusade began, or Vigilus Conflict began, known as the War of Beasts, which was when Abaddon came back and tried to take the Necromund Gauntlet for Chaos, but he was stopped by Guilliman. So Abaddon has finally there's an opposite to him. There's a good guy version of him now able to stand up against him, which is what's stopping him from basically taking over everything.
I mean, balance is very important in all things.
Yeah. The Word Bearers Chaos Legion attacked the world of Benediction, which was a holy world, and they tried to basically corrupt this church planet into a chaos church planet. Which I just bring this up because a big psychic awakening kind of event happened where the mass prayer of the citizens summoned the protective spirits of the dead saints, who showed up creating the Saints Wall, who were able to defeat the army of demons, allowing the Salamander Space Marines to win the war. So basically just regular people prayed so hard that angels showed up.
That's right. So it's the power of prayer, everybody.
So,
if you have the power of prayer on your side, you'll never get hurt.
Realistically, we just know this is like a warp spell being cast and, being manifested. But it's showing that non-psychers are able to, manifest things now. So, example, the game Darktide. As a zealot, when you charge and get stronger, you're probably actually getting stronger with magical warp power. Just because that's possible now. The warp is so expansive that normal mortal humans can tap into it for moments of time, kind of thing. Another thing happened, which was pretty big very recently, which was the Silent King of the Necrons returned. He showed back up and said, "What the fuck are you knuckleheads doing?" to all these crazy bickering Necron lords.
You little scamps.
Did a bunch of talking around the Necron lords, got them back to working together, and he's like, I went out and I've been sitting in dark space this whole time, letting you guys do your thing, and I found something called the Tyranids. And the Empire's like, yeah, we know. And he was like, oh
shit, I should have
told you guys earlier. I guess I'm late. So the Necrons are now waging vast war against the Tyranids. That's their whole purpose in life, is the Necrons and Tyranids. So now these two giant end-worlding powers are each other's own worst enemies.
Well, let's at least let them distract each other.
Yeah, that's basically what's happening, which is great for everyone else. The Necrons are made entirely of metal and energy, which is not edible to Tyranids, so they don't get anything by eating them. And the Necrons are able to hold off Tyranids because the Necrons are immune to warp damage, generally. So these warp-powered, Shadow of the Warp thing doesn't really affect Necrons. The last thing we have to talk about to keep us up to date with everything is the Nurglite Death Guard Marine invasion. And the Demon Primarch Mortarion came back and he attacked Ultramar because people really want to try to take over this planet. But Mr. Guilliman, Robbie G himself, arrived, fighting his brother and smacking him down back to hell. But soon Rob had to head out on crusade again with the work of fixing the Empire. So he's kind of all over the place. The Empire's in a pretty bad shape right now. It does have Guilliman back to help it out, but they're not doing too hot. There's just too much shit going on.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, it just sounds like the whole galaxy is in chaos.
Yeah, it is. And it's a crazy time. They're working with the Eldar. That's unheard of and is happening on a larger scale. Guilliman is perfectly okay with them, basically because their magic brought him back to life and they didn't harm him at all. So he's like, there's nothing wrong with these guys. The elves are fine. And everyone else is like, no, they're Xenos heresy kind of stuff. Even the Astra Militarum are hiring orcs to do their war for them.
All right.
So their Astra Militarum are hiring freebooters, which are orc space pirates, to take out Chaos and other Xenos threats. They're like, hey, the Tau of a World over here. Here's a bunch of money and a good fight. And the orcs are like, fuck yeah, dude, let's go. And
if you can understand each other, then you guys can help each other out. And, you were saying that everything gets worse and worse, but, after everything gets so bad to the point where you have nowhere else to go, who do you turn to? Your previous enemies. So, it's not bad.
Yeah, so I mean that's kind of a good point too. There is seemingly a bunch of more unity and people kind of helping each other out. So
but everybody keeps losing.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, it's with the Great Rift being there, all these people, yeah, sure, like psychic powers, like showed up and stuff, but the chaos are stronger too. So they're stronger than ever and showing up ready to fuck everyone's day up.
Yeah, like Korn wiped out 8 of his bros just because he was mad.
He had a pissy fit.
That's got to mean he's got plenty of bros to fight still.
Yeah, well, it's just like the Chaos Legions now. These Chaos Sorcerers are showing up more and more prevalently. They're able to access magic and summon demons easier because there's more warp everywhere now. So it affected both sides, and Chaos is just growing out of control. We recently had a big surge of Chaos in the lore where they learned how to possess their Marines easier. So there's a lot stronger Marines now. They're kind of like countering Primaris Marines by having demon-possessed Marines.
Sick.
So, things are going bad places. But that is the entire overall timeline, basically, from 65 millions before Earth to the 42nd millennium to where we are now and what the state of the galaxy is like.
It's not good.
But not
again,
good.
A little bit more teamwork between races, which is the only silver lining. But it's only because they all kind of have to, not because they wanted to.
Yeah, and Gilliman's back and hopefully leading the Empire into a better place. We'll see if he survives.
Yeah, I like Gilliman. He's a good dude. Oh, by the way, this is actually Warhammer-related news. While we were doing Lore Lords, I did go on Twitter for a second and see that immediately after Henry Cavill got the shaft on both Superman and The Witcher, apparently Amazon has reached out to him about making a 40k series.
Yeah, so they're making a 40k show based on a character called Inquisitor Einhorn, which is a book series, and Amazon's making it. And there's rumors because of that he's going to be playing the Emperor. So,
oh boy, he's going to be a dead guy in a chair.
Which I could see.
I don't know when that takes place.
It's way after the Emperor, but it could be like a flashback thing or like a mental thing because Einhorn's a crazy story about an Inquisitor who also might be a Chaos Lord. So, but he's able to keep it under wraps for the betterment of the Empire and using that Chaos Insider stuff to fuck over Chaos kind of thing. So,
that's a cool story.
Yeah, it's a cool story. It's a very popular book series, and they're making apparently a show about that. But that's the end. That's the end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed getting what this world is. Quite frankly, there's like 50 other podcasts and talk shows out there just about Warhammer 40k lore. So it's a lot. I did my best to try to do an overall. This is as storied as the world is. There's just too much to skip. There's too much to.
It's kind of like the World War II speedrun.
Yeah, you can't get into it all. There's too many little stories. Maybe I'll do more in the future about something specific if people want it. But that's all we got today. Thanks for listening so much. I hope you had a great time, and I think we'll just see you next time.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.